One of the MDGs in Brazil was to eradicate extreme poverty and hunger. Brazil has achieved this goal. Proportion of population living with less than $1.25 a day decreased from 17.2% to 6.1%. Proportion of population below minimum level of dietary energy consumption fell from 14.9% to 6.9%. Another MDG in Brazil was to achieve universal primary education. With a high net enrollment rate of 95.6%, Brazil has achieved. Another goal was to promote gender equality and empower women. This means equal girls' enrollment in primary school, women's share of paid employment, women's equal representation in national parliament. Brazil has achieved this goal with the ratios of girls to boys in primary education is 0.94, share of women in a wage employment in the non-agricultural sector increased from 35.1% to 41.6%, and proportion of seats held by women in the national parliament rose from 5.3% to 8.6%. Another goal was child mortality. This means to reduce the mortality rate of children under 5 years of age by 2/3. Brazil has achieved this goal, as children under 5 years of age, their mortality rate was reduced from 58.0 to 15.6.
Millennium Development Goals in Brazil is to improve maternal health. More specifically, this is looking at reducing maternal mortality by 3/4 is their specific goal there, and increasing access to universal reproductive health, so primarily birth control or anything in that category. Brazil has not yet achieved this goal, but they do look to be on a good path to getting there in the next, not necessarily by 2015, but in the next little while anyway. So between 1990 and 2010, maternal deaths per 100,000 people have declined from 120 people per 100,000 to 56 over that 20-year span, which is a great it's a great sign that it's decreased that much, but it's not quite at their goal, which would be 30 for every 100,000. And they're still working to get there. Another sign that this is going well is their contraceptive prevalence rate has increased from 76% in 1996 to 80.3% in 2006. So this is any sort of birth control, so the amount of people in the country who are using birth control. And another statistic showing that there have been improvements in Brazil is the decrease in unmet need for family planning. This has gone from 12.8% in 1990 to 6.0% in 2006. One reason that these goals are difficult to achieve is because a close monitoring of maternal mortality is actually quite difficult because of poor information and underreporting of cases in Brazil in the healthcare system there.
Also, one of their goals was to combat HIV, AIDS, malaria, and other diseases. This means they wanted to halt and begin to reverse the spread of HIV and AIDS. Brazil has achieved this goal, as HIV incident rates held constant since 2000 and death rates reduced. Incident rate and death rate associated with tuberculosis decreased.
Another Millennium Development Goal in Brazil was to ensure environmental sustainability. More specifically, this goal looks like integrating the principles of sustainable development into country policies and programs and reverse the loss of environmental resources. Another thing they want to do is have the proportion of the population without access to safe drinking water and sanitation. Also, they want to improve the lives of those living in the slums in Brazil. Some signs of progress in Brazil have been the reduction in the deforestation index and CFC consumption and increasing energy efficiency by relying on renewable energy sources. So Brazil has made a shift toward renewable energy sources and away from fossil fuels, and been making smarter choices in their energy consumption. Another sign of progress in Brazil for the environmental sustainability is the proportion of people using an improved drinking water source rose to 98% in 2010, which is a good sign. Only 2% of the population, which is still a lot of people, are using not improved drinking water sources. The proportion of the population using an improved sanitation facility also rose to 79% in 2010, which is a good sign, but still not where they want to be. Also, the urban population share living in slums fell from 36.7% in 1990 to 26.9% in 2009. So again, this is a good sign of progress, but not quite at the speed that they want to be. But it is looking better than it was in 1990 anyway. A few things that are not going so well, some signs that are not good coming from Brazil in this category, are the land area covered by forests fell from 69% in 1990 to 62.4% in 2010. Obviously a pretty big drop there. And the government, to combat this, has begun an initiative called Bolsa Verde in 2011, which is meant to improve the protection of the Amazon region. Another negative sign in this category in Brazil is in 2010, 2% of the population had no access to clean water, which is, like I was saying before, a very significant number in the population, because Brazil is so populous. 2% of the population is still a ton of people. So again, to combat this, the government began an initiative called Agua para Todos in 2011, which aims to improve the access to clean water. Another negative sign in Brazil is the Brazilian slums remain one of the main challenges the country needs to face. In 2010, about 6% of the population, which is equivalent to 11.4 million people, lived in slums in Brazil. So yeah, that's quite a significant number, and definitely a big challenge that they still have to tackle.